Welcome to the Kingdom View. I am your host, Luann Toposky. Thanks for joining us. Come on, let's see what God has for us today. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Kingdom View. I am your host, Luann Toposky. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about human trafficking. Last week, we had an amazing panel with Natalia Litnevsky, Arlana Scola, Mandy Lee Lindsay, and also Rachel Harris. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about human trafficking. Because this is a popular, very popular topic of interest, we wanted to share a little bit more about our expertise. So again, a little bit about human trafficking. As we all know, it's a $150 billion industry, right? We all know that. It's huge. So there's a problem. There's a problem out there. The definition of human trafficking is a practice of exploiting adults and children for use as commodities or objects in conditions of sexual and labor servitude. Also known as modern-day slavery, human trafficking is the illegal trade in human beings through recruitment or abduction by means of force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of forced labor, debt, bondage, or sex exploitation. This is huge, right? So we know that it's a problem. And what can we do about it? There's a lot we can do. First of all, we need to educate our children at home, as Rachel Harris had shared with us last week. And there's some other things. We just need to be more aware. I mean, this is a real thing. It's a $150 billion global business, which means this is a global problem. Over 25 million people, men, women, children, and babies, it's crazy, and babies, are victims caught up in modern day slavery. This is a problem. It's a huge problem. And we would like to be advocates for those who are caught up in slavery, sex slavery. Now, as you know, Mandy Lee Lindsay has been involved in human sex trafficking, and she has shared her story. She's going to share a little bit more with us today. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And also we have Natalia Litnevsky. She's going to share a little bit more. Again, we want to just remind our audience that not only is this a problem here in the United States, but it's a global issue, and we all know it is. So thank you for joining us. Welcome to part 2 of human trafficking. And we're going to go ahead and just share clips with you from Mandy Lee Lindsay and Natalia Litnevsky. And hopefully this information will help you become more aware of the problem and help to expose human sex trafficking globally, wherever you are.
Yes, it reminds me one of the strategies actually how the traffickers recruited more potential young girls, and I was told that in order to gain your freedom, you will have to bring back 5 young girls. So they would make the victim a traffickant. So on top of what she had already had, the trauma she carried the guilt of a traffickant. She carried the guilt, she felt herself in blood because she invited 5 other girls, but we could understand her why she did that, but not the other side of this picture. Because if the man would think about each one's story when they will go for this service, because as Rachel mentioned, that she has never dreamed of becoming a sex prostitute, right? And there are so many other stories, and people think that this is their own will. This is what they decided to do, like dream to do. And if men would think about each one's story, that they might not have become like a prostitute, where we don't know what's the reason behind that. Maybe she's on drugs, maybe she's got starving kids at home, maybe she for other reasons, so probably, and I'm sure the demand would be lower. And also, what I want to say is that people are very judgmental, and that's why they don't stop doing, like, the victims of human trafficking don't come home because they feel shame, they feel guilt, and they feel like no one will embrace and have them, no one will welcome them, especially the smaller the community, the bigger the shame. So we need to open this subject, and in America, in small countries, in Africa and India, in everywhere, so that people, parents, in the school, teachers, everyone should know about and stop judging them.
Amen. Thank you for sharing that. Rachel, you have last words. What do you say?
Well, I would like to say that in our modern society, we tend to put these sort of social blinders on, don't we? We're taught to mind our own business. And even when something is awkward or you feel something is not right, we're taught to turn our head because we shouldn't be paying attention to it. It has nothing to do with us. We've got to break that social barrier and reteach ourselves to be observant. And after all, it could save someone's life.
Right.
So we need to start paying attention. And also, it also starts at home. If you want to get down to the very nitty gritty of it, parents and guardians at home need to be talking to their children. You can teach your child at a very young age what is appropriate and what is not without going into explicit detail, such as who's allowed to see me naked. Maybe it's only mom. Maybe it's mom, dad, and grandma. Who's allowed to, touch my private areas. Maybe it's just mom during bath time, but the child needs to know these things. And they also need to feel comfortable with trusting their parents so that they can go to them for just about anything. So have that open communication with your child. And if you see something, say something. Not everybody can do everything, but everybody can do something. If you do see something, don't try to engage the trafficker. The last thing you want to do is put yourself in harm's way.
Right.
But you can call the human trafficking hotline. And if you don't have that number saved in your phone, then 211 is the crisis line. And then, of course, if you're really nervous, 911. Take note of the descriptions of the possible trafficked person as well as their perpetrator. What do they look like? And if they're getting in a car, the make, the model, and the driver's license, anything or plate, I should say, anything that would be helpful to authorities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. This is an amazing story. This whole story, it's a story that's coming down, and this is the end game, right? We are here to help you understand that human trafficking is real. People are losing their lives over this, and we need to educate people. You need to educate people. What can you do? What can you be more aware of? Can you share with your children? What can you do? Because you can do something. So thank you again for joining us today on this very important matter, human trafficking. Let's end this game now. Next, we have Mandy Lee Lindsay. Mandy defied the curse of death and darkness by the power of God and holistic healing techniques. She is a survivor of human sex trafficking and narcissistic abuse. Coach Mandy is now a sought-after and powerful kingdom-minded transformational coach focused on setting the captives free through her inner healing and deliverance retreats, as well as coaching ministry. She is amazing. Mandy, can you please share with our audience your understanding and experience about human sex trafficking?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Luann, for that powerful introduction. And, I just am so grateful to be here and to be able to use my voice to help set the captives free. And I just love what both Arlana and Natalia shared before I came on today, and especially what Arlana was sharing, about the identity disturbance. And she was talking about how a lot of the women that have been trafficked end up having identity disorders. And I know, that for a fact, because that was my story. And, I was trafficked when I was young, but I was groomed at a young age just from being, exposed to pornography and just different types of exploitation that happened to me as a child. And, that led me into being trafficked at the age of 16. And at the age of 16, when that happened to me, and then I ended up, coming into some really dark places after that. And that led me into the commercial sex industry at the age of 19. And, I was in a really dark place. I had gotten kicked out of my mother's house. I was living in this dingy little basement apartment. I was just, in a place where I was just lost, and I was searching for something, anything, and I needed money really, really badly. And, you have to remember, I had been trafficked when I was 16, and I was exploited when I was a young child through pornography and other things. And, I was groomed for what happened to me that led me into the commercial sex industry. At the age of 19, I saw this ad in the paper, just like Natalia was talking about, that those ads that she saw talking about girls looking for webcam jobs or, easy money working from home. That's exactly what happened to me. I saw an ad in the paper. It was this teeny tiny 2-sentence ad that said, $250 a night possible, no experience needed, costumes provided. And that was it. And there was a phone number. And I called that phone number. And just like Natalia shared, the person on the other end of the line was so smooth. They were so kind. They made you feel like this was something normal. They really normalized what you were stepping into. And I thought, okay, well, let's do this. And, I went there and I walked right into the door of a brothel. And, I was really staged for this type of a circumstance. And like I said, I was groomed, I was cultivated into this from years and years and years. This was a progression. This wasn't just one day I woke up and thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. It wasn't a dream of mine. It wasn't something that I desired to do. It was a circumstantial thing that kind of led me into this. And again, you walked into these doors and the people, they welcome you with open arms. And just like Natalia said, we're one big happy family, and everything's going to be great. And, they make you look all pretty, and they show you these costumes, and, you think, wow, people are actually, they love me and they want me, and you start making all this money, and it seems really great, but then after a while they start intermittently taking your freedoms away from you, and after a while you don't get to keep the money. You have to give the money to someone else. And I was trapped in this for 10 years. And like I said before, this wasn't something that I grew up wanting to become. It was something that happened due to circumstances. And it's just one of those things that we get judged and we get kind of labeled that, oh, this is they're a prostitute or they're a sex worker because this is something they desire to do or something they chose to do. And that is so far from the truth. I want to shine a light into that space, and I want to stop stigmatizing the women and the men that have been trafficked, as it is their choice, because it is so far from their choice. It is not a choice at all. It is a grooming process. It is a circumstantial progression of events that leads men and women into these circumstances. It is not a choice. It is definitely a sense of forced work or coercion that leads them into these places. And again, this was 10 years of my life, and I ended up becoming addicted to drugs and alcohol during this time in my life, and just to kind of numb what was happening to me. And I ended up with that identity disturbance and that identity disorder that Arlana talked about. And in the commercial sex industry as well, you know, you end up with unwanted pregnancies. And that happened to me 3 times. And so I ended up having 3 abortions as well. And, you know, this kind of goes hand in hand, you know, abortions and commercial sex. And, you know, it all works together, you know, and I really wanted to speak into that today as well, you know, how it's not just the atrocities of trafficking that we're coming against here. It's also the atrocities of abortion and other things that go hand in hand with this industry. But, you know, again, this is something that we need to shine a light on. While it does happen in places like Russia and other third world countries, it is happening right here in the land of the free and the land of the brave, right here in the United States of America. You know, I went to a Christian school. I was the captain of the cheerleading squad, captain of the debate team. You know, it wasn't necessarily my upbringing, if you will, but again, it was the circumstantial things that happened in my young childhood that led me to this. And, you know, there are children, our children, that are responding to these ads every single day. They are so prevalent in our society. You know, you see them all the time. These really vague ads that say quick money, you know, call this number for quick money, or webcam models like Natalia mentioned. Another one is also lost pet ads. That's a really big hook to draw children in. They'll call and they'll say, you know, oh, I saw, you know, the dog. And then they tell them, okay, well, come here and meet me and we'll talk about it. And then the child shows up there, you know, thinking they're doing something good, and then that's when, you know, they get coerced or forced into doing something that they normally would not do. And again, this is something that we need to really be aware of, is these vague ads, and just other ways that children and individuals are getting roped into the commercial sex industry.
Thank you so much for sharing. You know, I'm going to have to say, Mandy, that the hand of God was definitely on you.
Yes.
You know, because from my understanding, people only last 6 to 7 years in the human sex trafficking industry. You, God bless your soul, honey, but you were there 10 years.
Yes.
And I've seen pictures, I've seen statistics, 6 or 7 years, and people die. These women die. They were not. Go ahead.
You're absolutely right. I witnessed many girls that died, you know, that did not make it out. And I praise God every single day that I did make it out onto the other side. And you're absolutely right. The hand of God was on my life, and I am so grateful for that. But the reason why is so that I could become a voice and I could become an advocate for these women. And that's exactly what I do now. You know, I do have a coaching program. I've written a book called The Same Power that talks about my story of inner healing and deliverance. And, you know, I've created a coaching program to guide other women into freedom. And I work for, you know, free, which is freedom and restoration for everyone enslaved, where we're opening up a safe house, and, you know, we raise awareness in our community. And, you know, I am just going to continue to use my voice, and God knew that, just like Joseph, right? Yeah. They meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Amen.
Amen, sister. And thank God. And I know that you also have Freedom Reigns coming in, and that's going to be mid-July. So for anyone who wants to be a part of that retreat, it's a 3-day retreat in Pennsylvania, and they can get that information on your website, I take it. Is that right?
Yes, actually, I'm also speaking in a retreat, you know, here in May as well, called the 5 Stones Retreat, right. And Freedom Reigns Retreat is in July. And yes, that is going to be an in-person retreat in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And this retreat will be powerful. There will be 5 international coaches present that are going to be providing their story of breaking free from toxic cycles. And we are just going to guide women into the healing to break them free from toxic cycles of relationships, cultural, societal, toxic thought patterns, toxic behavioral patterns, addiction patterns. We are going to teach them how to break free from these toxic cycles and to break into who they truly are, to step into their identity and their destiny, and to take their power back. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's just going to be a powerful weekend. So you can go on my website, www.mandylee.com, and you can pre-order my book right there on that main homepage. And you can also click on the link that says retreats to sign up for my retreats as well.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I get to be a part of that that retreat in July, and so I'm very honored. So thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you for allowing me to share, Luann. It was such a blessing to be here.
I would also want to bring to your consideration another aspect of human trafficking. I call it legal human trafficking. That's my point of view. The thing is that human trafficking is relatively a new term, but its implications are as old as centuries. I remember once when I was 12, everyone in my village were gossiping about a woman who threw herself into a well, thus committing suicide. And of course, everyone were saying, how could she do that? She committed an unforgivable sin, and now she will be buried outside of the cemetery. I was a kid, but I remember I was able to understand that woman. I knew that she only wanted to stop this vicious circle. The thing is that back then, 80–90% of women in my village, my community, my country, my society lived the same life. That woman had a husband who regularly beat her. She had children. She had to make sex anytime her husband wanted. She lived under a constant fear for her children and for herself. She had no voice, no freedom, no choice, and even no divorce option, living under a culture of shame. I was a kid, and I couldn't also understand another tradition that was happening in my culture, and that was kidnapping young women for marriages. For example, a young woman could be kidnapped by a young man and brought into his parents' house, and that's been done. Everyone considered them engaged. And if the girl didn't want to marry that man, then everyone knew that no one, including she herself, knew that no one will marry her. Thus, every woman I know that has been kidnapped for marriage, they stayed in that marriage because fear of the future, fear of shame, and fear of her parents' reputation. I also remember a woman who was my closest neighbor, and from time to time she came to our house to hide from her husband, who regularly beat her. And as she couldn't bear that anymore, once she decided to run to her parents' house in the village she was originally from. And guess what her parents told her? Oh, dear daughter, we're so sorry for you, for what you're going through. But see, in our family, there is no such word as divorce. So now you must go to your husband and accept your fate. I'm sure these are regular cases in many parts of the world. Think even about child marriages, also about arranged marriages. I cannot believe that young women are being sold by their parents for a dowry, for money, for benefits, for name, or even because of the fear of shame or a bad reputation. I cannot believe that young women are socially and religiously manipulated, brainwashed, and threatened for the purpose of free labor, free sex, and childbirth. If this is not human trafficking, then what it is? The same signs, the same means. You may say this is domestic violence. Yes, it is, but I think this domestic violence is just an implication of a huge problem in the world, and that is human trafficking.
If you do see something, don't try to engage the trafficker. The last thing you want to do is put yourself in harm's way.
Right.
But you can call the human trafficking hotline. And if you don't have that number saved in your phone, then 211 is the crisis line. And then, of course, if you're really nervous, 911. Right. Take note of the descriptions of the possible trafficked person as well as their perpetrator. What do they look like? And if they're getting in a car, the make, the model, and the driver's license. Anything or plate, I should say, anything that would be helpful to authorities.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. You know, this is an amazing story. This whole story, it's a story that's coming down, and this is the end game, right? We are here to help you understand that human trafficking is real. People are, you know, losing their lives over this, and we need to educate people. You need to educate people. What can you do? What can you be more aware of? Can you share with your children? What can you do? Because you can do something. So thank you again for joining us today on this very important matter, human trafficking. Let's end this game now. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time on The Kingdom View. Bless you. If this message has blessed or inspired you in any way and you would like to support The Kingdom View, go to thekingdomview.com and click on the donate button. All gifts are tax deductible. If you would like to join us at our Inner Healing Conference in Jacksonville, North Carolina, August 20th, 2022, just go to thekingdomview.com for details. You will have the option to attend the conference on site or online.